Hope everybody's feeling good. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Lisa Reichert. I'm the Career and Professional Development Lead with People and Organization Development and the now co-chair, and I'm thrilled to be moderating this session today. So welcome to Dante's Comedy and the Art of Work, presented by Nicole Pagano. Just a reminder that you can access the slides to this presentation from the session description on the Now Conference site. And this session is being recorded, and the recording of this session will be shared later on our post-conference website. So in today's session, everybody will start out being muted. Please add any questions you have to the chat. We'll have a couple of opportunities for some share outs during the session and hopefully some time for some questions near the end. And you will also be able to reach out directly to Nicole by email. Her email is in the deck, and we'll share that also later. And with that, I am happy to introduce to you our presenter, Nicole Pagano. Nicole serves as Chief of Staff to Saul Perlmutter, Professor of Physics and Nobel laureate at UC Berkeley. She first read The Divine Comedy in college, an experience so formative it inspired her to pursue her master's degree in art and religion from the Graduate Theological Union. Her studies concentrated on the connections between the philosophical, the historical, and the aesthetic elements in Dante's works. In the classroom, Nicole teaches the Commedia as a liberation text, where students can bring their personal experiences into dialogue with Dante's words for the benefit of their own lives and communities. She's led workshops in this style at the San Francisco County Jail, Incarnation Monastery, and the School of Applied Theology in the Bay Area. Nicole is a member of the Education and Outreach Committee for the Dante Society of America. Please join me in welcoming Nicole. Nicole, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I can't really express how excited I am to be here and to share what Dante has to say about our lives and work. So I'm going to share my screen and share some slides with you. But as Lisa said, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And at the end of this session, we'll have some moments for reflection and hopefully time to share a little bit too. All right, so with that, we'll try this. Great, okay. So I'm really delighted again to be here, and I'd just like to reiterate that Dante's Divine Comedy addresses some of the most challenging questions we face as human beings, and I'm really excited to explore how this masterpiece can kind of become a friend for us in our lives and our work. So in this hour, we'll have a chance to pause and reflect on our current circumstances after a really incredible year, right? I'll then introduce you to Dante Alighieri and take you through the three canticles that form his comedy, Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. We'll look at how each of these places function, learn a little bit about what its inhabitants do, how they work, and then I'll describe what Dante's work becomes. For the main character in the poem is also named Dante. Then we'll wrap up with some reflections on the work I see Dante asking of us to accomplish as his readers. And like I said, I'll invite your questions along the way. And if we don't get to them for some reason, we can be in touch through email. All right. So in framing up the comedy for you, I wanted to say a word about Dante's sources. It might be a little funny to think about what life was like over 700 years ago in Italy, but as a medieval Christian, it's fair to say that Dante would see much of the world through his lens of faith. That said, it's also fair to say that he had his criticisms of the church, and he gave voice to the corruption that he witnessed in the papacy and experienced himself. So Dante saw the world through other lenses too. He saw it through politics, through the vernacular, through history, philosophy, science, and even some numerology thrown in there. And what's fascinating is how he draws these multiple ways of seeing the human condition into a new whole. And this synthesis, I think, is part of the reason why the comedy has inspired so many writers and artists, regardless of their religious backgrounds. He's had a strong influence in the autobiographical works of Primo Levi, the figural writer, chemist, and Holocaust survivor. Amiri Baraka, also known as Leroy Jones, wrote a novel in 1965 called The System of Dante's Hell that is loosely based on his own harrowing experiences growing up as a Black man in America. These and other literary giants like Jorge Luis Borges, T.S. Eliot, Toni Morrison, William Butler Yeats, and many more than I can name in the visual, musical, and performing arts, all of them felt the influence of Dante's company in their work. One of these artists was an Italian-American named Alfeo Faggi, who completed the bronze sculpture we see here of Dante in 1923. And one last thought to keep with you before we dive in. Dante's original title for his poem was simply The Comedy. Only when some time has passed after his death did the word divine appear next to it. And in comedies, as opposed to tragedies, we know that things tend to work out. So I like to think that the poet's original title gives us an important clue, that his journey through the afterlife, it turns out to be all right. If we do the work, which entails learning, transformation, and the joy of creative expression, we're going to be all right. And as someone who cares about my beloveds and my communities and the world in the present time, I take comfort in that idea. And I hope we can take comfort in this idea together today. So some background. Dante Alighieri was born in Florence in 1265. As a teenager, he was orphaned and assumed responsibilities of his father's home. And in his youth, he also met a certain Florentine woman named Beatrice Portinari, who would later become his poetic muse, especially after she passed away as a young woman. Without her, there'd be no Divine Comedy, nor his first book of lyric poems called La Vita Nuova. Dante went on to marry and have 4 children while he became a poet and politician of some standing in Florence. Eventually, he was elected to one of Florence's highest ranking government offices. He worked to ease political discord within his party. But in 1301, the papacy arranged for him to be exiled. So at age 37, Dante lost everything and began living his remaining years on the road, working as a writer for hire in the courts of northern Italy. Here's how one scholar, Michele Barbi, described what Dante witnessed outside of Florence's gates. The world was without justice, without peace. There were laws, but no one had either the power of enforcing them or an interest in doing so. Greed, envy, violence were everywhere triumphant. Wherever his harsh exile drove him throughout Italy, Dante found other unhappy persons who had been cast out of their cities. Nowhere did he find orderly, peaceful government. Quarrels, oppression, and the despotism of factions or usurpers raged on all sides. So not an easy time. And yet, for all of the turmoil in Dante's life and his world, his exile would mark the time of his greatest creative achievement. In 1310, he had likely completed Inferno and followed suit with Purgatorio in 1315. In his final years, Dante composed Paradiso. And for the last few years of his life, he was actually able to reunite with his family in Ravenna until his death in 1321. So somehow, under extraordinary circumstances, Dante produced a poem of epic proportions that wove in the themes of justice, love, faith, science, poetry, and self-knowledge into a unified whole. And he did it in rhyme for over 14,000 lines. And from those lines form 100 cantos that are organized into the 3 trains of the afterlife that you see here in these volumes. And this slide shows you just what one translation of the comedy looks like in its entirety with commentary. It's the story of one man, Dante, who finds himself lost and petrified in a dark wood. And over the course of a long, long journey, he overcomes his obstacles. It's the story of a student who has the incredible fortune of finding his greatest teacher. He is Virgil. It's also the story of a person who's saved by a woman, Beatrice, who arranges his safe passage through the afterlife. And in a way I didn't fully appreciate before, it's also the story of work, both in terms of the work Dante undertakes for his own liberation from the fear that keeps him half awake in his life, and the many souls he meets along the way who desire to do the same thing for themselves. And this may very well extend to his readers too. I have a feeling that it does. So in some ways, it's perfect for us now, right? As in Dante's day, we are still struggling to make a just world and to find our place within it. We are still prone to exile. If we just think of our immigration crisis and the many groups of people that have been exiled in this country's history, it's not a hard leap to make. And the pandemic is its own form of 21st century exile. We have lost life as it was once familiar to us. These last 15 months, they have brought about just enormous change for us. And soon our worlds will be opening up again, when we may be heading back into the office or doing things like virtually. We'll need to navigate an additional set of changes. So we might ask ourselves right now, what is our work? How do we find our way as individuals, as community within our respective departments? How can we, as proud members of the University of California, create and maintain a culture of belonging that is at once brave and considerate? Dante's poem, born of a time of great tumult, offers a range of possibilities for us to consider, and work is critical to the development of his souls in the afterlife. So let's see what he has to say. We'll start with Inferno. At the top left, you can see the wood where we meet Dante scared and alone. I'll say more about this in the next slide, but for the purposes of this one, I'd like to explain the mechanics of Inferno to you, how it works and who lives there. The diagram before us shows Inferno to be a deep pit burrowing into the very center of Earth, where medieval legend had it that Lucifer resided. It is famous for its 9 circles, but you can think about it divided into 3 realms of malfeasance. The first is the incontinent, souls who couldn't really find a healthy balance for their appetites. These folks developed habits around things like greed and anger that they just couldn't quit. And the second is the violent. These souls sadly do harm against themselves and others and God. And the third category is the fraudulent. In Dante's rendering, the worst thing you could be is a liar to your family, to your friends, or your country. And if we look at these 3 categories, you can see how the behavior in each of them sort of hardens as you get lower. And it hardens into this place where you don't really have a human being at all. You have a soul who's devoid of care for themselves and for others. And this is where they miss the boat, so to speak. Without that moral compass, they never corrected their course. And so they become so lost, they agree to abandon their hope. And that is the price you pay to enter Inferno. Some of you may have heard the line before, abandon all hope, ye who enter here. That is on the gates of Inferno. So in abandoning hope, they abandon their very capacity to think freely, to move freely. And in Inferno, they are instead compelled to repeat their addictive, violent, and fraudulent behaviors forever. Together, the infernal souls reveal a lot about human vulnerability and how we relate to it and how we may choose not to relate to it. It also shows readers how easy it is for all of us to miss our mark and how we need one another to find our way. This is an illustration by Gustave Doré of Dante and Virgil just before they enter the first realm of the incontinent. It's of the lustful. So as they stand on the jagged edge of a cliff, Dante and Virgil gaze at the myriad souls blowing above them, forming a humongous snake-like whirlwind in the distance. So what we're looking at here is a form of the punishment fitting the crime, also called contrapasso. In life, these souls mistook lust for love, and they followed it to the detriment of all else. In death, the winds of their passions become their permanent environment. And so they are blown about in these winds forever. Couples who had illicit love affairs are attached at the hip for eternity. And I think any of us can imagine that gets a little uncomfortable after a while, right? Well, that's the idea. So in Inferno, the souls have no hope. They can't change. And without change, things stay uncomfortably the same. So now back to Dante. At the beginning of the poem, he finds himself in a dark wood, as I've mentioned, having no idea how he got there and where he should go to escape catastrophe. He's in just a terrible way. He tries to find a way to escape, but it just doesn't work. Then out of nowhere, the poet he admires most, his rock star, he appears, and it's Virgil, one of the most celebrated poets of antiquity. He tells him there's no easy way out. Dante, you've got to take a long journey through the afterlife in order to save your life. And Dante first says yes, then he starts to equivocate. He wonders, who am I to do such a crazy thing? What happens if I fail? It's all very familiar, I think, for anybody who has a big decision to make, and feels some concern about it. But Virgil then tries to convince him even further by an experience. So he tells him a story of how Beatrice came to Virgil, Beatrice, Dante's muse, who was in heaven, to ask Virgil to help Dante because Beatrice knows that Dante will listen to him. And in learning this, Dante finds its courage to begin his journey with Virgil through Inferno and Purgatorio. Pardon me just a second.
And Nicole, we had a question come in.
Yeah.
James asked, does the 9 circles have any correlation with Odin's 9 realms?
Odin's 9 realms. Interesting. I don't know. I'll have to explore that. I have made a note of it. And it was James
Dozier.
Dozier.
James, please correct me if I am mispronouncing your last name.
Okay. Oh, yes, I see it now. Great. That'll be interesting. So this sculpture is Virgil. Virgil's on the left, Dante's on the right. And it was made in the mid-19th century, so 1862, by an artist named Baron Henri de Trichetti. And I wanted to get back to the lustful. So when these two come to the circle of the lustful, Dante listens to the testimony of a couple named Francesca and Paolo, and they're an example of these people who are sort of attached to the hip forever and just blown around in their passions. And Dante becomes so overwhelmed by his sympathy for them, I think in part because he's a romantic himself, he faints. He gets overwhelmed and he faints. He can't see how Francesca and Paolo are in part responsible for the situation. There's no ownership about where they are right now. So Dante isn't able to perceive of their lack of insight and interest in changing things for the better because his feelings are just so large. He doesn't yet have the wherewithal to get underneath the smooth rhetoric of Francesca, who is very smooth, to understand how they've chosen to confine themselves. But slowly, as Dante and Virgil walk through the infernal pit and go deeper and deeper and deeper, Dante learns to hear these souls more clearly. And with Virgil's help, he's able to think through the falsehoods in their accounts. So Inferno, the sinner's work stays the same, but Dante changes. His work is to learn to listen closely to the infernal souls and attend to the meaning of their words while witnessing the nature of their punishment. With Virgil's support, he learns to interpret their testimony with more insight, and Dante recovers a part of himself. He recovers his capacity to think clearly, which helps him to cope with difficulty and fear. And he's able to move, he's able to continue to move on rather than being stuck like he was in the dark wood with his ambivalence. And as readers, our work is to witness Dante's growth too. In doing so, our desire for deeper understanding gets piqued too. When something doesn't sound quite right, we can form our questions to get closer to the truth. And we can become a bit braver and bolder for doing our work. So after Dante and Virgil emerge from the filth and muck of Inferno, the beauty of the heavenly stars awaits them before they move on to Purgatorio. And in this one small but lovely detail of the poem, there are so many that I wish I could introduce you to today. But this one I particularly love. The last word of each canticle is stelle, the Italian word for star. So it ends Inferno, it ends Purgatorio, it ends Paradiso. And it is this simple, beautiful incantation that reminds us of the beauty above us, of the mystery above us, that is easy to miss, but technically surrounds our planet all the time. So unlike the chaos of Inferno, unlike the denial of Inferno, the mountain of Purgatorio, this hums along. It runs according to a schedule and structure, and also in contrast to Inferno, there's a collective sense of purpose and urgency among these souls. Everyone has to go through each of the 7 terraces of the mountain to work through their version of the 7 deadly sins. So this is more of a Christian construct of sin. The construct of sin in Inferno was more one of antiquity that Dante would have read of in his readings of Cicero. So the 7 deadly sins, you can see whether we start from the bottom: pride, envy, wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony, and lust. So the souls on each terrace perform their labors together. They're often in close proximity with each other. And even though their stays are likely to be centuries long, their intention remains clear. They know why they're there. They seek to work through what's held them back from life so they can reach paradise after death. And in committing to the work, by staying with the task at hand, they're able to build new habits. So this is different. They may be doing similar work. It's not exactly the same as it was in Inferno. Things evolve. And some might call this a virtuous cycle, where the work supports the will or your values, and the will or your values motivate the work. In Purgatory, the penitents eventually heal from their former tendencies to turn away from what is good, and they learn how to turn toward the good, with increasing ease and freedom and frequency. And the work of this, it's a little graphic sometimes, but over time, the labor becomes easier. And when the task is finally mastered, a soul is sentenced to another terrace and a bell rings out in recognition. And finally, when a soul takes flight from the summit of the mountain into the heavens, the entire landscape shimmies in a small earthquake, and the penitents take a moment to celebrate the ascension. It's like a little party. So real transformation takes place for the souls on Mount Purgatory, but it's really rooted in a deep sense of community. So here we'll move into one of the cantos. It is the canto of the Prideful in Canto 10 of Purgatorio. And this is an illustration by an Italian graphic artist named Amos Natini from the early 20th century. So in the Middle Ages, pride was considered the worst. It was the root of the 7 deadly sins. And it was seen as a habit that actually displaced the dignity of a person. So rather than valuing the role of relationship in life, these souls suffered the illusions that their achievements, that their family names and their privileges were theirs and theirs alone. And on this first terrace of Inferno, the deadweight of pride stunts a soul's capacity to be fully human and to see their connectedness to others. And in order to achieve the humility to restore their dignity, the spirits work through their pride by carrying enormous stones on their back. So here you don't even see the soul's heads in this figure, right? You just kind of see them crouched under these very large stones. And in this illustration of Canto 10, you can see Dante in red in the terrace of the Prideful, while Virgil is in blue, checking out the souls carrying their heavy burdens. So this image again is by Natini. And the larger their stone, the lower the souls must hunch over, and the more their gaze is forced to the ground. And on the ground, there are these beautiful panels of images that show examples of prideful stories throughout human history. As the souls walk with their burdens, they learn from seeing these examples until gradually the lessons of humility start to penetrate. The spirits begin to meditate in response to these images they see, and in meditating, they are changing their words into newfound humility. So it's really a change of consciousness, it's a change of a whole mindset. And as you can see in this illustration of the Prideful, Dante is mimicking the posture of the penitents as they walk. In Purgatorio, as Dante ascends the mountain with Virgil, he participates in the work of each terrace as he interviews its inhabitants. He does his version of working through the 7 deadly sins, and he sheds the habits that put him in the dark wood to begin with. So here's an illustration by Leonardo Da Vinci. It's called The Vitruvian Man, and it's from the late 15th century. I'd like us to pay attention to the posture, the full human posture that the man is diagrammed with here. It was created to kind of illustrate the ideal human proportions in its time. But here I'm including it to be a representation of what happens sort of at the end of the prideful soul's evolution. So in the realm of the prideful, like I said, Dante and the penitents change how they see. They have a change of consciousness in terms of really living in a new kind of humility. And slowly the stones they carry become smaller and smaller until the penitents rise from a hunched posture to resume the grace and freedom of a human being's natural stature. Dante and Virgil continue to make the arduous journey up the mountain, transforming the deadly sins into new virtues. When they arrive at the summit, Virgil sees his job as complete. He has accompanied Dante through Inferno and Purgatorio as Beatrice has asked of him, and the time has come for him to depart. It's a really tender and beautiful moment when a mentor sees the growth of their student, who is now able to stand on their own 2 feet and find their way. Virgil says to him, "No longer await any word or sign from me. Free, upright, and whole is your will, and it would be a fault not to act according to its intent. Therefore, for yourself, I crown and mitre." And yet, Dante's work is not yet done. We might think that he graduating from Virgil's teaching would make him fully ready to meet Beatrice for a joyous reunion at the top of Mount Purgatory. But that doesn't happen, as this illustration from Filippo Agricola of the 19th century lets us know. It's just not meant to be. So instead, Beatrice and Dante, they have something of a reckoning. She confronts him with being disloyal to her memory, and she asks that he acknowledge it. And, you know, it's so human. His fear reemerges, and he stammers, and his confidence wobbles. He can hardly speak because he hasn't seen her in so long. But eventually he does find his word he needs to reconcile with her. And that word is a word of admission, and it's a word of relationship and willingness. That word is yes. And I can't help but think of all the work that this character has taken on in Inferno and Purgatorio with Virgil at his side, and how clarifying his mind in Inferno and redirecting his intentions in Purgatorio allows him the room in this critical moment to give voice to his mistakes and to protect his relationship with Beatrice. So this is an image for the NASA Hubble telescope, and technically it's all of our image because we produce it as taxpayers. So after his apology, Beatrice permits Dante to look into her eyes, and the radiance of them to him blazes like the sun. He can hardly take it for too long. But soon after this moment, he and Beatrice are zooming toward the heavens on their way to Paradiso. So what can we say about the art of work in Purgatorio? The souls benefit from their hard labor to help themselves in community. It also has something to do with the newness that can come from sincere and sustained effort over time. Tremendous obstacles can be overcome when a common goal is in sight, and a precious sense of community can take shape. The work of the terraces help the souls shed what has bound them up and allows their dignity as individuals to take new shape. If Dante the character is any indicator, his efforts in Purgatory have made him newly capable for the relationship he has yearned for with Beatrice. The mountain asks for hard work, but it yields growth from within that is supported by the good company of others who are endeavoring to do the same work. Everyone is working toward having the strength to being held accountable. Everyone is in for the long haul to see with new eyes, and everyone is reaching for the stars. No one is ever alone in Purgatorio, and it's this sense of good company that allows individual strengths and capabilities to come through. And as readers, we see the promise of hard work in Purgatory, both as it helps us to overcome our personal challenges and how it can serve others in community. Purgatorio also reflects a wonderful aspect of work that can happen over the course of a long career. The struggle to gain mastery of something can lead to rewarding results for ourselves and our relationships, even in the very long term. So Paradiso, this charts Beatrice and Dante's trip into outer space. Excuse me just a minute. Here they visit souls who inhabit the moon, followed by Mercury, Venus, the sun, Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, starry sphere, the crystalline sphere, and finally the Empyrean. This map it reflects a cosmology that was understood in Dante's time and is obviously very different now. But on these planets and in these heavenly spheres, the souls find their place after ascending the terraces of Purgatory. They landed on a particular planet or sphere of the heavens, and they become a body of light. They glow with more or less with their capacity to reflect love and joy, and they know their place in the cosmos and can rest in that knowledge. Like Purgatory, the work here is more than an individual endeavor. Paradiso is a place of intense learning, like Purgatory, but it's also a place of shared creativity, not just shared community. It is a place where music is produced. Multiple notes are held in beautiful harmonies, and fiercely opposed on earth find some way to praise one another from a place of informed appreciation. And in its upper reaches, the light-bound souls can configure and then reconfigure themselves into collective shapes. And there is a beautiful freedom of expression by the communities found in Paradiso. So we're looking at Gustave Doré again. He illustrated most every canto in the comedy. And this is the sphere of the sun. Dante and Beatrice are standing in the middle on a cloud, taking in the souls made of light above them and below them. And here we have some of the greatest minds in history forming two circles around one another. They are scholars and theologians who in medieval times received the most academic training in Europe's universities. Souls in the realm of the sun vehemently opposed one another philosophically or religiously on earth. But in heaven, they quite literally sing each other's praises. And it's praise sung from a deep understanding and appreciation of one another, and a deep humility of one's own experience. There's a kind of fluency, if you like, with the other person's life as they express a deep humility about their own point of view and beliefs. These souls form two circles and they dance in a reel with the circles moving in opposite directions, so everyone can see each other face to face while they dance. This is a kind of equivalent if you think of people like Mitch McConnell singing the praises of Barack Obama, or Joe Biden singing the praises of Mike Pence, and vice versa. Take your pick of polar opposites. If they were here, they'd be joyfully singing to their enemies. As for Dante, his overall work in Paradiso is to continue his learning from the souls with Beatrice as his guide and eventually achieve enlightenment. Beatrice teaches him about some of the highest forms of human activity, prudence, fortitude, justice, and temperance, she then helps him to reach still higher for other virtues like hope, faith, and love. As they travel together, it is Beatrice's gaze, her smile, that inspires Dante to keep going. And near the end of Paradiso, Dante sees Beatrice return to her place, way up high in the Empyrean, and he offers her his words that capture his gratitude. He says that she drew him from slavery to liberty with all the modes of power that she had. And he only asks her in that moment that these newfound freedoms that he enjoys can be preserved in him until they meet again. These few lines are another testament to the metamorphosis of Dante's character. In the dark wood, he was paralyzed. His commitment, coupled with Beatrice's love, proves to be so liberating that he is no longer afraid. In fact, the further Beatrice seems, the closer he feels to her. Soon after this moment, Dante encounters St. Bernard, who acts as an intercessor for Dante to have a beatific vision, where in a flash, he sees the universe animated and motivated by a great, great love, and his will and desire are moving smoothly within it. Once again, our gaze as readers is taken up to the stars to contemplate them and all their wondrous possibilities. Dante teaches us about the teaches about the creative potential within each of us when our work is our own reward. The scholars and theologians in the Planet of the Sun, they delight in knowing one another. And Dante delights in his voyage into outer space with Beatrice as his guide, the love of his life. And his work ultimately helps form a beatific vision that opens him up to eternal wisdom. So what does Paradiso say to us about the art of work? Paradiso is by far the most abstract and difficult canticle of the three. And yet there's something about the souls in this canticle, how they are content and can rest clearly within who they are, while radiating their own unique light in community and cooperation with others. There's a freedom of expression that creates the most astonishing images, sounds, and ideas in Paradiso. And then there's this transformative potential of relationships, like the one we witness between Dante and Beatrice. I think the work for us might have something to do with caring for ourselves and others by really using all of our means to do. And we do this knowing that at some point, those beloved relationships must transition to the territory of memory. And any of us who have lost a loved one, there's a kind of hard-won gift of freedom in that work too. So with that, I'd like to take a moment to turn to one of my favorite paintings of Dante. It's called The Divine Comedy of Dante and was painted by Domenico di Michelino in 1465. It was made in celebration of the poet's 300th birthday. And this year marks the 700th anniversary of Dante's death. And this image still remains in the Duomo of Florence. And you can make out the Duomo just to the right of Dante. The big dome is this amazing cathedral, Brunelleschi's dome. So here, Dante holds his poem between the realms of the afterlife as he imagined them and his hometown of Florence. And if we read the image from left to right, like a text, we can see the gates of Inferno on the left, with the souls scurrying behind it on their way down into the woeful pit, doomed to their own versions of Groundhog Day for forever. And then behind Dante, you can spot Mount Purgatory, where spirits actively work to transform the behaviors that held them back in life on earth. And finally, you can see the bands of bluish color stretching across the sky. This is heaven, where souls find a creative resting place. We find Dante in the middle, presenting his book to Florence, the city that exiled him. One way to interpret this painting, made so many years after Dante's death, is to see the poet transcend his circumstance as an exile. He comes back home to show what learning there is outside of Florence's gates. But his work doesn't end there. Dante stands on a path, and you can see it in the painting. It extends right out to us. the viewer, so we can meet him there in the middle of these worlds between the here and the hereafter. And with that, I'd like for us to meet him in the middle and turn to you. First, I guess I should pause a moment and ask, how are we doing on time? We have a little bit of time for questions.
We do. We are doing fine. We have half an hour.
Great. Does anybody, I'm just trying to take in the chat. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions they'd like to share for a moment here?
Yeah, I have questions. Good morning or afternoon. My name is Dion. I work with OUA. I just was curious about your idea of even putting this together and presenting it. Like, I've heard so many different insights to Dante, but just the way you put it together, it's just really cohesive, and it paints a much clearer picture. So I was just wondering your thought process to even bringing it to us in this form. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so touched. What did you say your name was? I couldn't quite hear.
Dion.
Dion.
Yes.
Thank you, Miss Dion. That's a really large question. I've been with this poem in some form or another, I guess, for, geez, too long. I mean, a very long time, decades. And I love it. And I love translating it to particular adult audiences so we can take a journey together through it in a way that meets that group's needs. So this I put together with the idea of work, and I looked to the poem to see what it had to say about work. And I found, like, I just found it was so fruitful. And Lisa and I have been talking about Dante. We've talked about maybe putting a workshop together with, that goes more deeply into the text. Today, we're just going to look at 3 lines of the first 3 lines of the poem. But I really love to see, we have so many images for the last 700 years that artists have made. We have so many different interpretations from writers and poets. And there's even a musician from Branford Marsalis's jazz band that has just created a Purgatorio suite. So, I mean, it just goes on, and it's not really that known, in some way. It's just how pervasive his influence is. I like to try to find some expression for that and to see how we can do better together, in a sense, through it.
Well, thank you for your form of expression. It worked wonderfully for my brain. Thank you.
Oh, Dion, thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm so touched.
Other questions, Nicole, I'll be happy to share them that came in through the chat. We had a question from Terry Moore. I take it that for Dante, pride is the worst of the 7 deadly.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think he wasn't alone. That was sort of a medieval outlook. It's kind of interesting. So, I mean, this is just a side note, but Florence was the wealthiest city in Europe during Dante's time, and it was really been on the ascent for a while. And people were a little nervous about luxury goods. I mean, there were limits on what people could wear to not seem too ostentatious. And I think that's just kind of an interesting thing, given, how flashy we can be today. But yeah, so pride, yeah, not good. Oh my gosh, Stephen Fruce, am I saying that name correctly? Franciscan thought, that's a whole world, Bonaventure and the mind's journey to God. And there are lots of Franciscans in the realm of the sun. But there's this kind of like interesting tension between the Dominicans and the Franciscans in Florence. And he was educated with both of them. And for those of you who aren't aware, the Dominicans and Franciscans are 2 orders within the church that came about in the Middle Ages after there was a big shift to cities. So religious communities moved from a more monastic tradition into cities and started serving city populations. The Dominicans and the Franciscans were among them. The Franciscans thought the way to God was through love. The Dominicans thought the way to God was through study. So there's this battle, and both of them are very much present in the comedy. You guys, thank you so much for your, oh, I'm so touched. Oh, okay. So Dante and Virgil, were they contemporaries? This is a great question. No, they were not. Virgil comes way before Dante. He wrote his Aeneid about the Trojan War, and much of Inferno, you could see a lot of the Aeneid in Inferno too. I mean, I could go on, but there are all kinds of textual references in the comedy. It's a really intricately wrought poem, but that's a great question. And Dante, in some sense, there's like a salvific piece of Virgil in Dante for the comedy. And I could explain that later. So Cassandra, maybe I can email you a little bit about that later. Oh, interesting. Thanks, Teresa. A medievalist friend told me that the worst of the deadly sins varied from time to time. I'd like to learn more about that. All right, so let's move into the last piece here. The last piece, I hope it's not the last piece. I hope that you continue with this for the rest of your lives. Oh, Jay Johnson, how does the fact that Dante wrote this in the common vulgar Italian? Jay, that's a whole other wonderful conversation. Dante also wrote a meditation called De Vulgari Eloquentia. It's on the eloquence of the vernacular. And it's huge. What he's doing, writing in the common language, is unprecedented and huge. And I think that's all I can really say about it in the time we have left. But again, I'm happy to talk about it more if you want to email me. I think the best translation, and I'm only taking time for this because I think it's so important, are the, oh, come on, is this from Oxford University Press. It's by Robert Durling and Ronald Martinez. Robert Durling was actually a very beloved professor at UC Santa Cruz and was very generous with me with his time. So I really recommend this. Okay, so let's move on. I'm gonna keep putting your comments and questions in the chat. We'll save them, and hopefully we can continue the conversation in some way. Oh yeah, okay, so I think we're good. All right. So this is a photo by Ansel Adams. And I'd like to bring us full circle to the beginning of the poem. And here are its opening lines that have been translated countless times over the past 7 centuries. And I don't want to butcher them by my parched voice. Nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita, mi ritrovai per una selva oscura, che la diritta via era smarrita. In the middle of the journey of our life, I came to myself in a dark wood, for the straight way was lost. There's so much to appreciate in these lines, so evocative and beautiful in their simplicity. Nel mezzo, in the middle. We might first think of middle age when we hear this. I think some of us on this call might think of that anyway. And we can relate, right? I mean, by middle age, most of us have known a dark wood or two. But if we stop to think about it, any time between birth and death could rightly be called the middle. In fact, we spend more time in the middle than we might think. And then we see the journey of our life. The signal for community is right there in the first line, our life. Life is something that every one of us take part in and share in. So when we get to this last part of this terzina, I found myself in a dark wood, for the straight way was lost. Here's exile, right? When we lose our way, when life changes in a moment and we're left wondering what has just happened. An illness, a death of a loved one, or a national disaster. And sometimes all three. I mean, many of us have experienced all three this year. These can all naturally leave us feeling on the outside of life. This is the dark wood, and this is where Dante starts. And this is where I'd like for our reflections to start. So with this in mind, I'd like you to take 2 or 3 minutes to write about a dark wood. It could be about any moment or time in your life that really, honestly, just took your breath away. Like I said before, a loss, a death, an illness, a terrible mistake, or the loss of a friend, anything that left you with this feeling that life would never really be the same. So maybe we could take a minute or two with that. Okay, all right. So with that, I'd like us to move on to our next reflection. And I'd like for us to turn to our favorite student-teacher duo, Virgil and Dante. So this painting is by Edgar Degas, and it's called Dante and Virgil at the Entrance of Hell. It too is from the mid-19th century when there was a real revival of Dante. So from 1858, I said mid-19th century, I meant. So keeping your dark wood in mind, I'd like you to imagine who your Virgil would be to guide you through it. And remember, for Dante, Virgil is the greatest He's his Muhammad Ali, he's his North Star. And if you woke up in a foreign place and had nowhere to go, who would you want on your side? This could be anyone from your personal life, someone you think the world of, someone who's taught you something invaluable. And I think this person would have to come to their wisdom would be hard won in some sense. The Virgil and Dante were both exiles, and Virgil is this font of wisdom for Dante. So I thought of some people that I might share with you. You can go personal or large. I think of people like Maya Angelou or LeBron James or Chico Friedman or Senator Mazie Hirono, Frida Kahlo, Maya Lin, Langston Hughes, E. Cummings, Dorothy Day, Georgia O'Keeffe, anyone in your pantheon of personal heroes that are especially wise would be a person to consider. So yeah, you don't need someone of worldwide acclaim, but someone who really inspired you, with their wisdom and their leadership. So let's take a couple minutes with this just to either think about it or write about it. And then in the chat, if you'd like to, I'm seeing some of your responses already. It's great. If you could maybe identify a Virgil and then a sentence, just like a short statement describing their strength and their special talent that they shared with you, that would be great. And we'll just take 2 minutes with this one. Okay, if anybody would like to add more Virgils to the chat, that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. It's so moving to hear about who inspires us. All right, so here is our final reflection. And here's Gustave Doré again with a depiction of Beatrice. For this final reflection, I'd like you to take 2 to 3 minutes and write a few lines about who would be your Beatrice, the one who sees a singular promise in you. We're talking about unconditional love here, a person who really sees you and your unique potential, even when you can't really do it yourself. And this person could be real or could be imagined, but this is definitely someone that you hold very close to your heart. A parent, a brother, a sister, a spouse, a friend, a seer, someone you see as being ahead of their time, someone who was or is committed to doing good work in the service of others for your family or in the world. This person is a bridge builder and a peacemaker. Some Beatrices that come to my mind in the public realm are people like Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Jane Goodall, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Joan Baez, Cesar Chavez, Walt Whitman, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Rosa Parks, Dith Pran, Lorraine Hale, Menchu Tum, Sister Helen Pridgeon. So these really are people who have just an amazing way of seeing the world and who have offered you that light and that grace to really blossom. So if you'd like, we'll take just a couple more minutes with this, and maybe two and a half minutes with this. And then if you'd like to share your Beatrice, I'd really be delighted to learn more about your heroes. And I'm seeing people remember loved ones who've passed away. And I just want to say how much my heart goes out to you. Hmm. I'm going to just, I don't like time sometimes, but we have to deal with it. If you would like to continue putting your comments in the chat and letting me know about your Beatrice, I would so love it. But I kind of feel like I'm tearing up too, but this is kind of what it is when you're dealing with Dante. I know what it is to lose people to death. And so I'm really so touched that everyone is participating in this way. And I like Daisy's comment. I think I might start calling my husband too, Beatrice. I like that idea. Okay, so for further reflection, with these allies on your side, with your naming your dark wood and understanding who would be your Virgil and who would be your Beatrice, what would be the first act of care towards yourself right now? And then what would be your first act of courage for your career, right? To build that sense of belonging and courage and kindness for yourself and for your career, and also the greater community that you see. What would be your first act of generosity for the greater community and of your colleagues and you see? And these slides will be available. So I just want to cruise along here so we can get to this part. So as we gather ourselves to move into our next sessions, I'd like to leave you with a short clip from Tyler Perry and his recent acceptance speech of an Oscar. I feel like it is just such a full expression of the work we've been talking about today. And I think even Dante himself would have been impressed. So let me see. Yeah. Here we go. Bear with me, guys, just a second. Okay, here we go.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. To the Board of Governors, especially to Whoopi Goldberg, Ava, you know, when I set out to help someone, it is my intention to do just that. I'm not trying to do anything other than meet somebody at their humanity. Like case in point, this one time, I remember maybe it was about 17 years ago, I rented this building and we were using it for production. And I was walking to my car one day and I see this woman coming up out of the corner of my eye and I say, she's homeless, let me give her some money. Judgment. I wish I had time to talk about judgment. Anyway, I reach in my pocket and I'm about to give her the money. She says, excuse me, sir, do you have any shoes? It stopped me cold because I remember being homeless and having one pair of shoes and they were bent over at the heels. So I was like, yeah. So I took her into the studio. She was hesitant to go in, but we went in, we go to wardrobe and there are all these boxes and everything around the walls and fabrics and racks of clothes. So we ended up having to stand in the middle of the floor. So as we're standing there, wardrobe, we find some shoes, we help her put them on. I stand up, I'm waiting for her to look up. And all this time she's looking down. She finally looks up, she's got tears in her eyes. She said, thank you, Jesus. My feet are off the ground. In that moment, I recall her saying to me, I thought you would hate me for asking. I'm like, how can I hate you when I used to be you? How can I hate you when I had a mother who grew up in a Jim Crow South in Louisiana, rural Louisiana, right across the border from Mississippi, who at 9 or 10 years old was grieving the death of Emmett Till. As she got a little bit older, she was grieving the death of the civil rights boys and the little girls who were in the bombing in Alabama. She grieved all these years. And I remember being a little boy and coming home, and she was at home, like, what are you doing at home? You're supposed to be at work. She was in tears that day. She said there was a bomb threat. And she couldn't believe that someone wanted to blow up this place where she worked, where she took care of all these toddlers. It was a Jewish community center. My mother taught me to refuse hate. She taught me to refuse blanket judgment. And in this time, and with all of the internet and social media and algorithms and everything that wants us to think a certain way, the 24-hour news cycle, it is my hope that all of us would teach our kids, and not only to remember, just refuse hate. Don't hate anybody. I refuse to hate someone because they are Mexican or because they are black or white. LGBTQ. I refuse to hate someone because they are a police officer. I refuse to hate someone because they are Asian. I would hope that we would refuse hate. And I want to take this Jean Herschel Humanitarian Award and dedicate it to anyone who wants to stand in the middle. No matter what's around the wall, stand in the middle, because that's where healing happens. That's where conversation happens. That's where change happens. It happens in the middle. So anyone who wants hate, to refuse blanket judgment, and to help lift someone's feet off the ground, this one is for you too. God bless you, and thank you, Academy.
Okay. I just wanted to leave you with that, to see of these eternal themes that we can link back and forth between Dante's time and our time, and really just the work that is incumbent upon all of us to keep with our task, to keep with looking out after ourselves and our goals for our careers, and to help one another. I want to thank you for spending time with Dante today. It is such a joy for me to do so. And I want to thank you very much, Lisa, for encouraging me to do this, and to the NOW conference organizers for this incredible opportunity. Again, Lisa and I are talking about potential future workshops on Dante and the Art of Work. So if you have any feedback on this session, I would be really grateful to hear it. And if you have any further questions or comments, I'll be happy to field them too at the email address here, nrpagano@berkeley.edu. And thank you, and enjoy the rest of this remarkable day. Sorry, my voice is failing.
Oh, Nicole, thank you so much for this beautiful, moving journey that you took us on with the timeless message from Dante. And just thank you for sharing your passion and expertise and your heart and soul with us. And I want to thank everybody who has joined us here. Thank you for your comments and questions and sharing. And I feel the great energy and love from this beautiful gathering. and we'll definitely talk, Nicole, about how to continue this journey in some way through offering Dante and the Art of Work. And everyone, please remember to complete the session evaluation. I added it in the chat. And next up, we have a 1-hour lunch break. So if you're interested in participating in a networking activity, we also are offering some networking activities during lunch. So feel free to take a break and join in on one or both of those activities. One starts at 12:50, the other at 1:15. And you can find those Zoom links in the venue website under the networking activity. And then we will convene at 1:45 in our main webinar room for an optional adult recess stretch break. And then we will have the third and final round of our breakout sessions. And we'll have another activity break, and we will have a wonderful afternoon keynote with Janet Napolitano, moderated by Eugene Whitlock. So please continue to enjoy the day, and thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon.